Singing Dutchman Productions. Hello and welcome to Doug's Front Porch, a podcast where I get to sit down with friends, old and new, and have honest conversations. Today I welcome Ryan Veltri to the front porch, a friend and a colleague, and I'm so glad that you said, you know what, Doug, let's do this. So welcome to the front porch, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Doug. I really appreciate it.
So before I always start each episode kind of the same way to give the audience a little bit of a background, but you tell us, if you would please, a little bit about, so where did you grow up and childhood stuff? Did you have siblings? What were you into as a kid? That type of stuff.
Sure. I grew up in Sussex, New Jersey, which people are always like, "Oh, you live in Jersey, so you're a city kid." But I grew up in the Delaware Water Gap area, so highest point, New Jersey, and if you go straight, you hit New York State. If you make a left, you hit PA. So we grew up in an area that geographically looks really like Blockhaven, small town, a lot of farms, and then the Appalachian Mountains kind of sit on the top, which is really awesome. So 5 state parks, and we lived where High Point State Park was, which is the highest point in New Jersey. So we were a bunch of farmers and mountain people, and all of our parents drove to the city for work. So that's kind of the situation that we had there. But it was a great community of people, real close-knit community, great people. Everybody kept an eye out for everybody. And it was a great place to grow up. I grew up with there was 5 kids, one girl who was the oldest, and then 4 boys with a single parent. So my mom raised us. My father had walked out on us when my youngest was born, so I was about 7. And my mom is a phenomenal lady. She's one of my best friends. She lives with me now. I don't know how we did that. But she raised 5 kids on her own and did a great job trying to keep us busy and keep us out of trouble. And pretty lucky.
Can I ask you a follow-up question about that? So,
Yeah.
looking back on it now, I mean, at the time, I'm sure it was a different view than what you have now as an adult, as a parent yourself. How do you think your mom did it? That's a lot. 5 kids, single
Yes.
parent. What about her? So, what about her do you think really allowed her to do that? And then looking back on it now, what are the qualities and traits that you think you took away from that as you are now a dad?
Yes. She is one of the strongest willed people I know. She grew up in Brooklyn, and she credits that as, her being tough. She loved sports as a young girl, and really during that time they didn't allow girls to play. But she said if she would have been able to play, she would have been the greatest softball player of all time. She used to tell us stories about climbing into the Brooklyn Dodgers, okay, their stadium before, Yankees and Mets and everybody else, sneaking into their stadium to watch games. So, but she was tough. She was the mama bear. She took care of us. She didn't really allow people to talk about our situation and what we were going through, because back then it was, single family wasn't looked upon as anything that was, really proud. Um, Hard work, dedication to family, lots of love, made you as a child, made me feel like I was important, and that I was special, and that when I needed her the most, she was there for me. And she would say, whoever needed me the most, that was who I put my attention to. So she was phenomenal back then. She was a cheerleader for us so she'd come to our soccer games and scream at referees, and she'd slam the mat and at tournaments, during wrestling days. But she just had a really special heart, and there are not too many people that could say that they dislike her, because she was a great person. Is a great person.
Yeah, right. We're gonna come back to this topic, but you already talked about it a little bit. So, as a kid growing up, I take it you played soccer, huh?
Yeah, that
Um,
was my thing.
so what was it about that sport that drew you instead of Little League baseball or football or something else?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was because there were times it could be individual. I remember at 4 years old, there was a tryout across the street from my neighborhood. and at the local elementary school, and they said tryouts for soccer, come and play, and I fell in love with it. And whether I had a group of people around that wanted to play or it was by myself juggling in my front yard, there was always a soccer ball. Um, and I just loved it. I don't know why. I tried baseball, and I wrestled and I did some other things, but soccer for me was just kind of my outlet, and I put all my energy into it. And I really, really, I loved watching it. I loved going to practice. I loved playing it. I loved being by myself and juggling. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes you can't explain it, right? Sometimes it's something just talks to you in a certain way that other things don't, right? Um, so let's fast forward a little bit. You graduate high school and you end up making the trek to Lock Haven University. Can I ask you what brought you from northern New Jersey to central Pennsylvania?
Well, my trip into college was a weird one. I wanted to go to Lock Haven. And I wanted to go anywhere outside of my area. And out of state was awesome for me. I thought that's great. I had unfortunately my mom didn't think it was a great idea because there was local colleges who were offering me a lot of money to come and play and offer me scholarships that I probably shouldn't have turned down. But as a kid growing up, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I was nowhere near good enough to be a professional soccer player. I was lucky I could, I had a right foot and a left foot, but I was not good enough. But the idea of being that was always my goal. And so going on visits, being told things by coaches, you start to believe things. And unfortunately, I fell into a trap at first where I went to visit a school in Massachusetts. It was a small school, 3 exits down from New England Patriot Stadium. MLS was kind of getting a good start, and they said, "Well, New England Revolution will be around. You can try out for them. They'll come scout games." All these things to kind of lure you in. And so I bit the apple, and I thought, "This is great. I'm going to go." And I did. I tried out for New England Revolution, and there was probably 1,000 of us there, and I got a nice T-shirt for it, and that was a pat on the back. And I realized, yeah, this is not going to happen. Um, so Lock Haven was always on the radar. Lenny Long, probably one of the greatest coaches around, um, had brought his team to my high school for camps. He was good friends with my head coach Bill Bauer, and so they would come to us, or we would come up to Lock Haven, and you kind of fall into that as well. So I remember talking to Rob Thompson, who at the time was the assistant coach at Lock Haven, and I said I want to come there. He did everything he could, and then I wound up here in little Lock Haven, and I have not left. And it's been a great time being here, and playing for Lock Haven was probably one of my greatest um, achievements, I would say.
That's awesome. So at some point in your career at LHU, when you weren't playing soccer, you had to decide on what you wanted to study. Did you go in declared, or did you go in undeclared, or
Oh,
how
Doug,
did
I
you?
made it. It was a nightmare of what I did. So this also gets my mom's blood boiling. I went in to the first school I went to. It was called Dean College. I went in as a um athletic trainer or sports management or some sort. I kind of messed around with that a little bit. I then changed it the second year I was there to sports management only. And then I changed to phys ed, health and phys ed, the second semester. I was just trying everything. And then when I transferred into the health and phys ed um, program here at Lock Haven. And prior to block your professional semester, I decided I was going to change my major once again. I had just finished playing and realized I did not want to be a health and phys ed teacher. I kind of figured I should probably make up my mind now what I want to do for the rest of my life. And special ed was always something that I really enjoyed, working with that population of kids. My mom had done that, so I had the experience in high school and working with those kids, and I really enjoyed it. And I thought, you know what, I did everything I could not to be special education teacher, but I think that's kind of my route. And that's I changed my major and put in some extra time and wound up graduating, and then I think it was the best option.
So that kind of transitions us into, so we worked together at the same high school, and actually we can rewind back to LHU days because we had a lot of mutual friends. Between
Correct.
I was really good friends with quite a number of the boys and girls soccer players, and I'm sure that we partied multiple times at the same parties and didn't necessarily get to know each other in that
Right.
sense the way that we do now. But we've been colleagues now for quite a number of years, and I mean, I don't want to talk too much shop, but I think it's important to talk a little bit of shop because I love hearing from other people's perspectives, especially those in the trenches, and trying to let people that listen to this podcast that have, their only experience of school is maybe when they were a student. And for some of those people, it's 20, 30 years ago, and so much has changed, and particularly in the field that you're in special ed. So let's just talk a little bit of shop, and then we'll move on to something else. But so you went in as a special ed, you were special ed major, you graduated with your special ed degree. Um, at that point, did you have a desire to either specifically do elementary or high school or middle school, or were you like, I'll take whatever job I can get?
Yeah, so my degree actually is no longer available. It was a K through 12. So they no longer do that. And so when I went through that program, I had access to all of those. So I did a placement in elementary, I did a middle school placement, I did a high school placement. And I liked them all. I mean, everyone I went into, I really, really enjoyed. So at the point where I was ready to graduate, I was like, give me whatever. I just kind of want to get my hands into the profession and get started. Um, yeah, and so I wound up getting pretty lucky. I had graduated in December, and about halfway through and knew of a positioning opening up at Keystone that was a half-year program or a half-year position. So upon graduation, I knew I was getting a half-year position in a learning support high school program. Um, and so I was pretty excited about that and was happy to work with the high school level because that was my last two placements when I was student teaching. So um at this point, so if I were to rewind the clock, I don't know if I could ever do elementary. I mean, there's no way because I've been with the high school program now for like 20 years. But to go back and do elementary now, I think I would never be able to handle it. So I guess high school would have been the one, and only also I think partly because of coaching. Um, so to be around those kids all day long and then to see them out on the fields and other activities and stuff. So that kind of was a interest of mine.
We're going to talk about coaching here in a little bit, but I want to stay on this topic for just a little bit more. So, you started out as kind of like you had so high school special ed, but special ed 20 years ago is so different from what it is today, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
If you were talking to somebody that had no idea what we're talking about, and you had to say, "Hey, man, in the 20 years that I've been doing this." These are some of the biggest changes, like two or three. What do looking back over 20 years of teaching special ed, what do you think are two or three of the biggest changes that have occurred to where we are today in 2023?
Well, one of the biggest, and you probably hear this every day talking to the people that we work with, is that paperwork piece. So paperwork has changed. It's been crazy because back in the day we had this might date us, but we had those carbon paper where you'd write everything out, and then it would make 3 copies and you would hand those out. So the ability to have technology and computers and to be able to share things is probably one of the biggest changes that we see when it comes to that situation. The kids back in the day when I first started, they were not included out with the general population. So there were kids that were in a resource room all day long. And they every year you kind of saw them paired with the same group of kids. And they went from one room to the next. Sometimes they stayed in the same room for half a day. And typically you never really saw those kids outside of the classroom or in the general population, except for maybe a lunch and your art and your music and those elective classes. So that was a big change. And then they started talking about inclusion and getting those kids into the regular ed classes, and we started to see a transition of co-taught classes. And that's evolved from the beginning where it does not look the same today. So thank goodness, because it was really not an effective way to support the kids that were in those types of classes.
When you say the paperwork, can you please just let my audience have a general idea? I mean, I know from talking and working with special ed teachers, but I think the average person has no idea. So you teach your whole, you teach a normal day, and then when you say, "Well, there's paperwork," what does that mean?
The paperwork is the extra added bonus of IEPs and NORUPs and packets for procedural safeguards and reevaluations and evaluation reports and documentation of the meetings and documentations of conversations with parents and documentation of conversations with kids and teachers and check in, check out sheets and all of these things that we're constantly writing things down, um, with the idea that it's supposed to support that individual kiddo. And sometimes it works to our advantage, and other times we don't do it effective enough and we're just chasing paperwork. And unfortunately, that's been a big thing for special education and the colleagues that I have in that department. It runs us pretty tired. And a lot of people burn out because of it. And unfortunately, the attention then isn't on the students, it's more on completing the paperwork.
Can we take a minute too and talk about your current teaching situation? You
Sure.
currently have a classroom of how would you explain what you do to somebody that doesn't know anything about special ed jargon and all those acronyms that are out there?
I'm full-time emotional support. So my kiddos are in my room all day long. What we do is we bring teachers in to teach content. And really, what the focus for our kids is what we call positive relationships and creating positive relationships, finding as many positive opportunities as possible because the students have a lot of emotional needs, and that could be from their home life or situations that are occurring. Um, some would put them in a situation where they're the bad kids, but that's not always the case. They just have a lot of things going on, in their day to day that, the general population of kids don't have, and the support that those kids have. So it's rough. It's not an easy day. Um, I've got a fantastic individual that works with me every day, Katie. She's phenomenal with the kids, and she's there all day with me. And I'm so very grateful for her and her work with those kiddos. But it's about building relationships, and
But Ryan, I get all that, but I have to ask you from an honest perspective. You're working with some kids that if you ask them to pick up a pencil or, "Hey, how was your day?" they could turn around and completely blow up on you and swear and call you every name under the sun. How do you get up every day and constantly go in and do it? Because from my perspective, I know some of those kids you're working with day in and day out, and I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. Those are the kids that I try to avoid.
yeah,
And I'm not alone. I mean, maybe it's bad for me to say that out loud, but it's true. And but yet you come in somehow every day. You get up, and maybe it's really hard. I'm sure it is. It has to be. But to get told off or to say, F you, Mr. Veltri, or this or that, how do you do it? How do you do it?
it's a good question. Honestly, you are a fantastic German teacher. You work with some phenomenal kids. Um, and I am very grateful for what you do in your classroom. You are, a great friend in that, and I applaud you. I I I don't know. These kiddos, they need someone. And my comment is, I'm not leaving them. I'm not walking out. They're stuck with me. Um, some days are harder than others, and we know when it's not going to be a good day. But I don't know, you just smile and, they might be swearing at me and telling me off, and there's times where I laugh because it is funny, only because I know that they're doing it because I'm willing to listen and they need it. And, if that's gonna take them 5 minutes of threatening me or telling me off or swearing at me and making fun of me, and that gets them to cool off and move on, I'm okay with that. Um, I don't know, you like them and they're bad, they do wrong things, but I'm always gonna give them a second chance because, I am there every day. I see things that are way different than what everybody else sees, and we're baby steps, but those steps are huge, and I'm very proud of some of the things that they've done and, things that they've started to do that they wouldn't have done, in the beginning of the year or last year, and there's this sign outside of our school that says stop. So as we leave every single day, that sign tells me to stop. That's my last thought process of school. I get home, my wife is a teacher. We do the old, how was your day? Good. How was your day? Good. Every once in a while, we have to vent and say, here's a story about this or that, but we leave it at school. And that stop sign is a big sign for me. When I first started, I had that long term, but I was hired as an emotional support teacher. And I
Oh,
spent 4 years with that population, and they were tough. And that was back in the day when we would have to restrain and wrestle kids, and they would cry at the end of it, and I'd be exhausted. But I knew as time went on and those relationships built over those 4 years, some of those kids I have contact with now, and it's crazy to see where they are and what they've done. Some others haven't made out as well, but yeah, stop sign helps. I'm a
I'm never
big,
gonna look
big
at that
fan of
stop
that.
sign the same ever again because I look at it every day too.
Well,
But
you have to find a way to just let it go and, leave work where it is. I mean, I've got kids that need to have their time with us, and we can't take away an opportunity of time. To me is important. So that's something I've gotten from my mom. Time is so important. And so time flies by, and I refuse to allow things like work kind of get in the way of time and of my life. So yeah, stop sign.
I, that is an important thing that in my 20 plus year career I have learned, but it came late.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, if you talk to my wife, she'll tell you, young Doug was working, 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 not always all the time with like school work, but I brought school home.
Yeah.
And it's only within the last, I don't know, maybe the second half of my career that I realized the value of doing exactly what you just did. And I try to tell younger teachers that too when I talk to them. I'm like, you look, you gotta set those boundaries. But it's teaching is so weird in that sense that there's this like there's outside pressure that you need to do this amazing job because it's the future of the country, blah blah blah, all this stuff we always hear. But at the same time, we're all just human, right? And
Yeah.
we do have lives outside of that building that we have to remember those boundaries. But that stop sign, boy, I'm gonna look at it tomorrow and I'm gonna think right of you, Ryan. That's
Yes. Well, and I think we have people in our building that are doing great things. And our community is wicked lucky for the teachers that are doing and going above and beyond. And I am grateful for many, many teachers. And unfortunately, we get stuck in our own little worlds. And I just hope that more people will ask each other how they're doing and look after each other, because that's important.
Amen. Amen. Well, I want to transition to something that we started talking about, but we're going to come back to it. So, soccer was such a huge part of your life growing up, and then in college, and then you had the opportunity to coach, and you're currently the girls' coach at the high school where we teach. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What do you enjoy about coaching over playing?
Well, it took me a really long time to get over that playing piece. As a coach, holy smokes, I was in the first couple of years, I was still a player, and it took a really long time to transition out of that. I was lucky enough to take a bunch of coaching courses through the NSCA, which is now something totally different, and it really taught me to look at um, how to look like a coach and how to act like a coach. But I love the day to day. I love getting to practice. I love drawing up a session. I love talking to the coaches about the session and what we want to look at. I love getting there and seeing the kids out, getting ready and coming out one by one and talking to them about their school day. I love getting out on the field and getting them all together and having a quick laugh before the warm up. And I love planning sessions um, in that environment. I could spend all day doing those things because it's something that I really love. But the energy that the kids bring is what I really enjoy. Every one of them is different, and they're there for a different reason. I always say soccer brought us together, but we're here and we become friends for whatever reason, and it's something really, really special. But that program means a lot to me, and I'm really, really happy to be a part of it again.
So, I have two follow up questions in regards to that. First off, you're coaching girls, and you're not a girl, Ryan. What hurdles did you have to overcome to do that job, to connect with young teenage girls. We know all of the things and the pressures that are put on girls and everything that, at that age in life. And then you step in as a male figure on the soccer field trying to coach them. What hurdles did you learn to have to overcome, and maybe ones that are still barriers to you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my first run with the girls program, I probably didn't think about too much of making them different than boys. We had some unbelievable athletes and some phenomenal soccer players, and we just focused on soccer. But after coming back and spending some time away and evaluating, I realized there's a real big emotional piece to the girl side of the game. They want to feel valued and appreciated. They want to hear that they're doing well. And, I guess being raised by a mother who cared for her family and my older sister, who was a second mother to us, I didn't have that male kind of dominance growing up of, barking and yelling at me. And even the coaches that I had some phenomenal coaches, some very well-known coaches that have done some great things with US soccer and beyond, that spoke to us like we were not necessarily peers, but we were, in there for a job and what we had to do. And so the girls game, they'll do anything for you. They're different than boys. Boys will say, I could do that, I can do that better than you. And girls are going to say, I will do whatever you ask me to do as much as I possibly can. And I will bend over backwards to help to please you. Um, but their spirit and their excitement and the way that they like to enjoy their time together is a lot of fun. And I'm very lucky to have some great female coaches, all alumni at Central Mountain, working with me. Morgan Walker, Lauren Heimer, Courtney Fornwall, or now Courtney Yurchak, and Jonna Harris, who's Jonna Garbrick, um, who have always pulled me aside and said, you got to think about it this way. And you listen to them because they were all in the trenches and they all know very, very well what it's like to be in the girls' shoes. So that emotional thing though is huge, and they ride that wave very, very big.
So here's the $1 million question for you as a coach. How do you build a team?
Yeah, that's tough. Because we're doing that now. First of all, you got to build a culture. You've got to build an environment that people want to be a part of, and a family atmosphere that the kids believe that they're there for a reason. And you got to start with the youth programs and build your way up. Right now, I'm doing it the opposite way because I was gone for a while. So now I had to do top to bottom, but we're starting to get there. Um, and back in the day, when you look at what the girls program did and how successful they were, that success was way off the field. And they were doing great things in the community and in the classroom, and, you know, coming back to the community and doing wonderful things. And there's a lot of girl soccer players on that Hall of Fame wall. I just want to give a shout out to that. But you've got to build a community, and you've got to create an atmosphere where they want to come and play, that they like to come and play, that they feel that they're supported and that you believe in them. And you've got to coach them the right way. You've got to treat them the right way. And then eventually you have the older girls who become mentors and are great ambassadors for the sport, and they are great leaders. And you put them in front of some of those little girls, and next thing you know, they're famous, and it's a beautiful thing. But it's not easy. I Back in the day we were there, and it was a fine oiled machine. And now you see softball's doing a phenomenal job. Volleyball had a great season this year. So you look at those programs and you see what those coaches are doing, and you ask them questions and you say, how do we get there? But youth sports is a big one.
Okay, I had a question about that I wanted to ask you from your perspective. Youth sports in America is massive. All these travel teams now, and kids, back in the day when we were kids, I think the majority of us, our only opportunity was to play at our school, and that was it, for sports, and for most of us anyway. But today, my God, when I look at a lot of the students who I have who are athletes, regardless of the sport, softball, baseball, soccer, football, wrestling, they're on these elite travel teams, or maybe not elite's not the right word, but these travel teams. So, from your perspective as a high school coach and also as a dad, um, what's your take on youth sports in America today?
We got to get parents away. Uh,
Okay, yeah, well, that's something else I was hoping you were going to talk about. I was going to ask you about. You're on the sideline of a high school. We'll come back to that first question, but you're on the sideline, high school soccer game, varsity game, and I hear from a lot of people that are refs or umpires about how that like nobody wants to do this job anymore because parents are over the top. So I'm sure you have experienced that.
yeah. Yeah, so I have experienced it with high school sports and then club. Club was a little bit different because they were paying us a lot of money, and we could just send their kid over and say, if you want to see me back in the game, you need to stop screaming at the coach. But with high school, it's different. Parents are very passionate. Some parents come from a sporting background, and it might be the wrong sport, but they come from a sporting background, and they want to see their kid do things and be awesome. And I just ask that they let us do our job. Referees are going to make mistakes, and there'll be times where I let the referees know. Um, but we do it in a way that hopefully we don't lose referees and those officials, because that's starting to happen. They've had enough, because parents are an issue with that. But we see it at every level. So you say youth sports, but that goes all the way up to the U.S. men's national team. What we're seeing now with the whole debacle of Greg Berhalter and Claudia Reyna and that situation. But back in the day, I would turn around and shrug my shoulders, or I'd kind of wave my hands like it's okay. I don't focus on the parents, and I preach constantly to the kids. Pay attention to what we're asking you to do, um, and to be honest with you, a lot of those kids out in that field do not want to hear their parents scream. They don't like it. They come off the field making comments about it, and it affects their play. It does not make them better. It really puts them in a shell, because now, especially girls, they're embarrassed. They're being singled out. So we call it the grandma effect. When you make a mistake, don't scream, because grandma's up there knitting and she'll only hear your mistakes and look up at your mistakes. So, parents aren't helping the situation. If a kid's having a bad game, that doesn't help when mom and dad are screaming or even yelling at the officials. It's embarrassing.
It's tough. It is, and it seems like we're in this culture right now that's just the knee jerk reaction for youth sports as a whole. Well, professional sports too. I mean, I've gone to professional sporting events where the crowd were just complete jackasses. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm hoping that we can kind of maybe turn that around. But just back to that one thing. Do you think it's good that we have kids so involved in youth sports like we do right now in our country?
I think it's good and bad. I think um, from the aspect where they're getting training from people who are now professionals is awesome. Um, but when we put people in a bubble and say only play this sport, and play this sport 6 or 7 days a week and travel here and be on a plane here and do that, I don't think we need it. Um, and I think it's taking kids away from free play and free sport. I know our kids aren't outside playing sports. They're inside playing video games or on their phones making TikToks and whatever else. But if we were to take away that some of that time where kids could go outside and play, tag, baseball, kickball, whatever it is, ride a bike, go through the woods, that's also sport. That's helping their bodies do other things. And so, you know, I was a club coach, and I kind of am still, and I had a team that was very, very involved, and we were traveling all over the place. Um, but I also wanted them to do other sports, and I wanted them to not lose sight of high school sports, because that's happening in soccer. You know, club teams that are now putting their kids into academies where they're playing all the time and they can't even play high school sports. I think that hurts our programs and it hurts our kids because they're not playing with their childhood friends. And there's nothing better than, playing with your high school buddies. So youth sports have changed, and I think it's more valued around money and building these these programs and these elitist groups that, we study it all the time. As a coach, I talk to all my coaching colleagues, and we look at all the stats and all the Twitter posts of, the U.S. men's national team. All the kids who made the youth team are all part of ODP or, the NPL or all these different things that they have out there. And it's not that. It's not that mix. It can't all come from one group of people. So it's an ugly sight, and there's a lot of money involved, and we're not seeing at the highest levels, really, in soccer at least, the capital gains of that. But who am I to say?
No, well, I was curious for your. I mean, you're in the trenches. I was just curious your
Yeah.
thoughts on that because I'm not in those trenches, but yet I see it from the outside of the bubble looking in, and I've thought a lot about it, and like where it's going. And I don't know. I mean, I imagine this machine is so big, youth sports and these travel teams, that it's not. You don't see it changing, do you?
No. And so here's my perspective. My daughter's playing club. I don't coach them, and I typically sit in a corner of the field, by myself or with my wife, or, you know, typically by myself, and I don't say a word. Um, there's no coaching coming from me. I will not coach them in any way because their coaches are taking care of that, and I believe in them, and they're phenomenal. Um, and so all the other parents are all grouped together, and they're screaming things and saying to, my favorite is shoot it right when a kid's about to shoot it. And I said to my kids, if anybody ever did that to you, stop the ball, turn around and shrug your shoulders. Like, no, duh, I'm going to shoot it. Like, I don't need instruction from you. So I watch, and I enjoy watching my kids play a sport that I love. And then when they get in the car, I ask them if they had fun. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy your time? Is this worthwhile? And they say yes. And the only time I step in and give any type of comment is when they ask a question. Do you think I should have shot that? Or do you think I should have done this? And I always ask them, what were your options? What were you thinking at the time? And did you think you made the best choice? Cool. So I don't put much emphasis on coaching them outside of their sport, in that if they want to go downstairs, we're building a new facility in my basement, little turf, indoor arena. When they want to come down here and play, hey, we'll play. But um, no other coaching comes from me. And a lot of people say, you're crazy. Why don't you? Because I just like watching my kids, and they're not. I hope they don't listen to this, but they're not going to be professional soccer players. So they just need to enjoy their time. And if they get the chance to play in college, that's phenomenal. And if not, there's under 40 leagues, and all those things are out there. So, but youth sports they're in trouble. We're in trouble. Because I don't see it changing, because I think that the big powerhouses have enough control over things that they'll just keep generating new ideas and new thoughts, and you have to keep up with everyone, and you really don't. I don't know how it changes.
Yeah, I'm with you. Totally looking from the outside in. There's too much money there. There's too much, yeah, influence, and no, I hear you. Well, Ryan, this has been fascinating conversation on a lot of different aspects. But this, as I think you listen to the podcast, or at least you've
I do.
listened to episodes. So it's time for your 10 quick questions, my brother. Are you ready?
I think, is this like a time thing?
No, no,
Okay.
no, no. But we've reached that point in the conversation. So, all
Okay.
right, here we go. Number one, what is your morning drink of choice?
Coffee, black with sugar, and I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Now I usually don't ask this, but I saw we're able to see each other. We're doing a Zoom here, and I saw you
Yeah.
lift your glass.
Yeah.
And we are both craft beer aficionados.
Yeah.
So what is your current favorite beer out there, or one of your favorite beers out there?
Well, I am a big fan of Other Half Brewing, that originated out of Brooklyn, and now have a couple of different spots. So I'm a big fan of Other Half. And luckily I was in Philly this weekend, and they had their anniversary drop. And ironically, I was able to bring home some of those to have. But the Other Half is probably my go-to. The easiest one is Neutral. I think what they're doing is fantastic. Great atmosphere. And the ability to distribute all their beer is cool. But some great people working there and doing a nice job with that. But I do love chasing beer places, and we do spend
I
a lot of
know.
vacations going out for beers. Beer's
Well,
important.
I would like at some point to go on a beer chase with you. I think that would be a lot of fun. We'll have to make that happen sometime.
Yes.
As long as it's not just all IPAs, because I know you like your IPAs. But
No, but I also love like great farmhouse ales.
mm,
I love saisons. I'm a big collector of those. There's some great places that I go to in Philly that I bring bottles back and I store them. And I'm a big red wine guy.
ooh,
So
yeah, let's make that happen sometime.
yeah, I'm totally all about that.
Awesome. All right, I know the answer to this, but I have to ask it. Who is a go-to musical artist or group for you?
That's an easy one. And many people who know me know this answer. The Dave Matthews Band is my go-to, and they've been my go-to since 1992. I've been chasing that band. And if I were
Yeah,
to tell you how many times I've seen them, more fingers and toes than you, me, and my wife have.
that's the one
Um,
thing I've noticed from following you on social media about, and I knew that you were a huge Dave, and I am too. I grew up with Dave Matthews. I saw them a bunch of times when I was in high school. I was totally younger than what I should have been at some of those concerts, given the other people and what they were doing there. But what is it about Dave Matthews that you love?
uh, I just remember when I first heard them back in the 90s, it was that bootleg trading thing. And I
Yeah,
was into Grateful Dead, I was into Fish, and I was getting bootlegs and trading them with friends and people. And they came across as a different sound. I mean, the horns, the violin, and that drum with an acoustic guitar. Nobody was doing it. And it was a beautiful, beautiful sound. And I just kind of enjoyed their jamming and their music and how they would find a way to just drift off and then bring it back. And so every show is a different show. No one has repeated it. They haven't not repeated any show they've done. So it just became something that I always say he was going through points of his life that I could find a similarity to. So, that young college, let's go, let's, have a good time and all this, into falling in love and then having a family. All of those pieces kind of I could I could sense in his music, and I was kind of going through those as well, and it was kind of neat to see a band for as long as I've seen them do that. And of course, my wife had to get into them.
I was gonna ask you, was she was she a Dave Matthews fan before you met
She,
her?
she was, but like not like she is now.
Not like she's
So
now.
we got engaged prior to a Dave show. We have our wedding song was a Dave song. We spend a lot of trips uh going to see shows and two night stands and all these things. And we brought our daughters to a Dave show at Bethel Woods, which is the old Woodstock. Yeah, we chase, and she's, I think, if we were to put numbers onto something, she's probably close to about 50, hitting 50 shows. So it's kind of neat to see her at those places where I feel very, very comfortable and have enjoyed. But I don't know, I just love them.
No,
I
it's great music.
Yeah,
Absolutely great music. All right, number three. What movie can you watch over and over again and it never gets old?
uh, probably movie. Ooh, I'm a big Goonies fan.
Oh, it's
I
a
could
great.
watch that, and I could probably watch Shawshank at any point.
Yeah,
Uh, but I am a big Goonies fan.
no, that's a good film. Well,
Yeah,
Shawshank's a great film too.
yeah.
Absolutely. What's your favorite sports movie?
My favorite sports movie. Oof, I don't know if I have one.
Okay. Yeah.
Sports movie. I don't know.
There hasn't really been a good soccer movie, has there? Not that I'm
No,
aware of.
they're all rubbish. The documentaries are good, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I know of any
Okay.
that I
No,
really
fair enough.
watch.
Fair enough. All right. What's the last thing that you read?
Um, Fire and Slice is a book about pizza. I'm a big pizza fan, as you can tell from my physique between beer and pizza. But I have a pizza oven, and I am trying to perfect, um, making pizza. And so I kind of am I get crazy. I get into something and I'm in it, and
Yeah.
then 2 years later I lose interest. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, pizza right now. I watch videos and YouTube, and
That's awesome.
yeah, I like pizza.
So what's your go-to if I'm coming over and you said making a pizza?
We're making pizza, all right, and you're coming over, so we'll have a beer. We'll have a little, yeah, let's do that. Let's have a little like saison, um, some type of Belgian maybe, and we'll make some pizza, a little Neapolitan. We'll make our own, and you can make whatever you want. I mean, that's the fun part about it is I have this oven that you make small pizzas and you can put anything on it. But I make my own sauce, and it is mozzarella, some basil, and that sauce, and
That's all
oh,
you need. If you got good ingredients, man, that's all you need, right?
it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I'll
sounds
eat it every.
great.
I can eat it every day. I'm that sick.
Well, this is perfect because question number 5 is, what is your favorite pizza topping?
Well, oh man, so can I cheat on this? I like
Yeah,
plain.
yeah.
I'm a plain pizza, and literally I could eat pizza every day. I ate it like 3 times this weekend. Um, but plain. But so if I had to pick a topping, if this is not cheating, I would do the pepperoni cups. You know, the pepperoni that cup up and they get the grease and oil in there. I would do that with hot honey.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like nice thick pizza, maybe like a tomato pie with yeah, pepperoni, hot honey. If I had to pick a topping, but if I was ordering a pizza, I'd get a large plain pie to go, please.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. We are a man
Sometimes
after my own heart.
well done, so that way it's nice and
Ooh,
crispy.
yeah, absolutely. Laying on the beach or going for a hike?
Oh, that's an unfair question because they're both great. I'm freaked out by snakes right now. I have
Okay.
not been in the woods for a while because some snake encounters, and I'm not very tough. Um, but I love the beach because I love laying on the beach and surfing and riding my longboard on the beach. And so we go on a trip every summer down to the beach with some friends, and that's probably my favorite spot right now,
Yeah.
especially since it's gray and ugly outside.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
All right,
Okay.
beach.
Okay. Well, we've kind of already talked about this, but I'm asking you anyways. You've invited me over for dinner. What are you making?
Well, we'll start with a little drink to prep, right?
Yeah.
And I make a mean chicken parm.
Ooh, okay.
So, are you into that?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I'd ask
There,
you.
there are very few things I'm not into when it comes to food, Ryan. So,
Okay. Well, I would ask you first, but I mean, if you wanted pizza, we could do if it was you coming over to hang out and, drink a couple beers and have a good laugh, listen to music, maybe pizza. If you're coming over and we're going to still laugh, drink some beers, but it's going to be a little bit more formal, chicken parm, some pasta. I make a great sauce.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds really good.
Come
All
over for
right.
the weekend. We can have
Yeah,
Friday,
the whole.
Saturday.
Oh man, we should have done that during the World Cup when the World Cup was on. That would have been good fun. Okay, what is a dream vacation destination?
Ooh, dream vacation destination. Uh I would I'm gonna cheat. I would love to take my kids around the US and hit all major parts of the US. There's some beautiful cities and some areas that we have not been in. I would love for them to see that in their lifetime. And I'd love to see that with them. So if I were to stay within the US, I would probably say something like that. But if I were to venture out, my daughter wants to go to Paris for some strange reason, and then my other daughter would love to go to Greece. So
Hmm.
maybe an Italy, Greece, France
Yeah,
trip.
that would be
But
good.
we are planning on heading to England in 2024 with their club team. So I'm pretty excited about that because I've done that before with some other teams, and that's a great
Yeah,
experience,
yeah, it
but not a
absolutely
dream
is.
because their food is horrible.
Yeah, yeah, it's getting better because, but
Hopefully, Georgie isn't listening to this.
yeah, she'll be quick to reply for sure.
Oh,
All right, what is something you're afraid of? I take it snakes, maybe a
yeah, I
little bit,
hate
huh?
snakes.
Okay.
Snakes are a big thing. And if it was anything else, it would be losing time.
Oh, what a great answer. Yeah, how about it? And the
Yeah,
older you get, man, that's. I
it's
was just
rough.
listening to David Crosby's. He died here recently, and he had
Yeah,
that song called. What was the name of it? But it was essentially talking about how time is a monetary value, and man, his lyrics were just like ripping me up. I was like, yeah,
yeah,
you're
hit
right,
home.
man. Yeah,
Yeah, it's tough.
absolutely. All right, last question. What job other than one that you've had would you love to have?
Ooh, jeez. Other than I've had.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Or like something like the men's national coach. I mean, was that something
Well,
you'd want to do?
no, I would want the women's
Okay.
national team because they're way better.
Okay.
Uh, um, I dream job. Being the kit man at Man United
There you
would be
go.
pretty sweet gig. Dream job. I don't know. Maybe being a captain of a yacht.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Dave Matthews guitar tuner.
I was gonna say that'd be a good job, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I would probably do a lot of different things. I never expected to be a teacher, so but maybe a German teacher.
Oh yeah, that it's a great profession, and we need people right now. So that's awesome.
Deal.
Oh man, Ryan, it was such a pleasure getting to catch up with you, talk about things I've always wanted to talk to you about, never had the opportunity. Because, like you said, when we're at work, it's man, we don't get enough time to breathe, let alone have a
Right.
good laugh, right?
Head
Um,
down and go to it, right?
Yeah, exactly right. But I want to thank you so much for coming up on the front porch and talking about some tough stuff. I mean, your job is not easy, and I wanted people to know that and hear it straight from you. And there's a lot of people like you out there in the educational profession that are doing great things. And I will say that I've had a lot of your soccer players in my classes. Some I had all 4 years go through German, and they are consistently, they have always been some of the nicest kids in our school. And I credit a lot of that to you outside of the classroom. So I wanted to say that to you.
Yeah, thank you. I
Looking back
appreciate
over the
that.
years, it truly is. I know when I have a girl soccer player in my class, I always do. They're,
Yeah, I'm grateful. They are phenomenal kids. So that's the light at the end of the tunnel of a tough day.
yeah, absolutely. Ryan, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. I look forward to coming over for some pizza sometime.
Yeah, let me know. I appreciate it, Doug. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Doug's Front Porch, a conversational podcast with your host, Doug Maidenford. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. 5 stars only, please. Follow along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just look for Doug's Front Porch. Also, please feel free to tell all of your friends about the show, and I'll see you all next time on my front porch.